Okay, good afternoon and good morning, participants. My name is Dr. Sirasa Qatar Tanakun. I'll be your facilitator today. I'd like to welcome you to the last webinar of the ASEAN Circular Economy Stakeholder Platform webinar series. And in this webinar, the webinar number 6 is titled Localizing the Circular Economy Concept Under the ASEAN Values. So I'm really excited to see the different values within ASEAN, because us as ASEAN as the region, we're such a diverse region, but at the same time, we also have many similarity. So today we're going to see how all of these value, the differences and the similarity has shaped how circular economy has been implemented on the ground. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome our chair, Jirachai Pankrasin, and Putri Suwit Ariyawat or Kun David, to give a warm welcoming.
Thank you very much, Sinasa. And good afternoon and warm welcome to all the speakers and participants in this webinar. Since November 2023, ACSCSD has partnered with Switch Asia to co-host the ASEAN Circular Economy Stakeholder Platform webinar series, stressing various aspects of the circular economy, which have delivered a number of webinars on topics ranging from making CE work for business and industry, green procurement, tourism and food sustainability, circular fashion, to a just transition to a circular economy. Today's session is the 6th and the final webinar in this current series. As our previous webinars have really covered aspects of the economic and environmental aspects of circular economy. So we thought it might be interesting for us to look at, or to end this series with a discussion on the socio-cultural aspect of circularity. The topic today, localizing the circular economy concept under ASEAN values, is perhaps something that's less discussed than other aspects of the circular economy. But I believe that these quote-unquote ASEAN values involve issues that are all familiar to all of us. These values have been passed on from generation to generation, and we have all learned about them at home and at schools while growing up. And I believe these values remain relevant today. The discussion today aims to explore how these traditional social and cultural values have existed in ASEAN for ages, and might be compatible with current circular economy concepts and principles, and may influence the way individuals interpret circularity in their local context, leading to the acceptance and adoption of modern circular economy concepts in our economies and societies, particularly in the local and community level. We're very happy to have a panel of experts who will share their views and experiences on the relationship from the perspective of some of the ASEAN member states. Finally, I would just like to take this opportunity to thank all the panelists and participants for taking the time to join us today, and also to take this opportunity to express my appreciation to Switch Asia for all of the work that they have done to help us produce this webinar series. I hope you have a productive discussion, and I hope everyone finds it very informative and useful. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Kun Jirachai Pankrasin, the Executive Director of the ASEAN Center for Sustainable Development Studies and Dialogue. Now, Mr. Trisuvit Ariyawat or Kun David, the Project Manager of the ASEAN Circular Economy Stakeholder Platform, will give us a little background about this.
Yep. Allow me to brief you on the background of our center, the host, the ACSDSD, the host of the ASEAN Circular Economy Stakeholder Platform. The ASEAN Center for Sustainable Development Study and Dialogues was established in 2019 as part of the ASEAN's leaders' commitment to sustainable development cooperation, and with funded by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Kingdom of Thailand. Our mission is to operate as a regional catalyst for sustainable development. We promote complementarity areas between UN SDG and ASEAN goals. We provide intellectual direction to CE and SD stakeholders in this region. We promote intellectual leadership position of ASEAN scholars and youth through our research, study, scholarship, and youth camp program. And we also engage on project with dialogue partners, say, for example, the ASEAN Circular Economy Stakeholder Platform, a regional knowledge and information portal on circular economy. And this platform also engage in several exciting events and activities such as webinar and annual event. Please stick with us until the end of this webinar. We will announce the upcoming, our exciting ASEAN Circular Economy Forum. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ka. Now, our first session is the role of culture and local value on sustainable development and SDGs by Kun Montakan Suwanathap Kittisansin, the Associate Project Officer for Culture at UNESCO Regional Office, Thailand. Please welcome Kun Montakan.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sirasa, and I feel very humbled to be speaking in front of so many audience and experts. So good afternoon, and thank you again, Swiss Asia, for the invitation to present some examples from UNESCO on culture's contribution to sustainable development. So without further ado, let's dive in. So I assume that we all are aware that culture takes diverse forms of how it is expressed. All these different expressions can be regarded as a society's assets or cultural capitals that we might call it. In other words, when we say cultural capitals, we can think of not only heritage sites or museums or art objects, but also living heritage or intangible heritage, such as performing arts, craft skills, festivals, religious practices, or sports, and cultural and creative industries such as books, newspaper, music, concert, visual arts, film design, etc. These are the three aspects of culture and local values that my examples today will reflect. So I want to first show you an example on built heritage, or monument built heritage, we call it, from UNESCO, but it is not going to be the World Heritage example because that's just, everybody knows about it. This is a program that UNESCO Regional Office in Bangkok has been implementing since the year 2000. It is called the UNESCO Asia Pacific Awards for Cultural Heritage Conservation. This particular awards program does not recognize the biggest, the most beautiful, or the greatest heritage sites like World Heritage status, but it recognizes success of private initiative and public-private partnerships in actualizing quality conservation practice at heritage sites of local significance. So in these pictures, you will see local sites like a temple in Bangkok, Wat Prayun Warawong Sawat, that received the highest level of the awards in this program. And the other picture is the Indonesian villagers in Flores Islands that work together to restore their Barunyang village. The participatory process like this is what this particular program seeks to press, not to press on the condition of the monument per se. So focusing on heritage of local significance, there are vast types of properties that have been awarded, from hammam to university dorms to ethnic villages to beer breweries to submarines like the one over here in the red box here, that's from Australia. For 20 years plus, this award program have given recognitions to over 230 restoration projects in 25 countries. And in its process, it emphasizes public-private people partnership, or 4Ps, for sustainable community, as well as bottom-up solutions for better livelihood. Second aspect of culture and local values worth mentioning is the living heritage, or intangible cultural heritage, or ICH. I would like to just use the UNESCO jargon like ICH because I have a difficulty pronouncing this in English. How the ICH is contributing to sustainable development. So these are three that I selected, three approaches that I have had direct experience working on. The first one is on ICH in education. The second one is on ICH or living heritage in heritage, like monument protection. And the third one is on ICH in ecological conservation or natural environmental conservation. So, but before we go into the examples, what does it mean by ICH? So this is an international definition of it. It is defined by practices, representations, expressions, knowledge, and skills that communities or groups, or in some case, like a few individuals, would recognize as a part of their identity and heritage, something that they want to continue to their next generation, so to say. ICH can take many shapes in like what we call domains or types. For example, oral traditions, performing arts, traditional craftsmanship, social practices, ritual festivals, knowledge and belief systems. So how are these different cultural practices contributing to sustainable development? My first example is our UNESCO Global Program. So this is the one that we've been doing in over 23 countries already on living heritage and education. UNESCO has been gathering some good examples of how teachers in different parts of the world are using local cultures and knowledge and skills as learning tools and materials. So these are some of my favorites from the project that I did in 2015 to 18. I found that in Pakistan, teachers use traditional textile patterns to teach geometry, for example. In Vietnam, students understand oscillation system in physics with Muang Gong music. And in a more impressive one for me is in Palau, where cars have just been used in recent generation. There have been a lot of road accidents. So because people were not fully aware of the traffic law, so schools, since 2013, they have been using balopis customs, which is like the kind of a concept on generosity and seniority, as a way to make a young generation understand the rationale of giving ways on the road while driving as well. So this is like the level of practicality that teachers like already are implementing, are using this, like, you know, without governmental policy or anything, but they're basically using it to get by in teaching their students. From these good examples, we make a practical handbook from then, like a regional level practical handbook for teachers, which has been used in various ASEAN countries such as Thailand, Laos, PDR, Cambodia, and Myanmar. The results of using such contextualized learning materials from the local culture as we gather are that schools can better engage the students to formal curricular subjects by using something that they normally see in their everyday life, and they eventually produce graduates. My second example is how living heritage is a crucial skill for historic monument conservation, essentially how it helps us maintaining assets for long-term tourism or economic activities or livelihood as well. This is a project that we did in Thailand after the flood in 2011, when we found out that there was no, like literally zero conservation specialist workers to help us restore the crumbling monuments in Ayutthaya. From that problem, UNESCO worked with Thai Fine Arts Department and Ministry of Labor in Thailand to mainstream the specialized career path for conservation masons and carpenters. So people who are construction workers receiving minimal wages can now have like a way to grow their skills and get better income while also helping their country maintaining the heritage sites. The third example on ICH that I want to tell you is about how traditional wisdoms and skills of ethnic minorities and indigenous people can help us tackle climate change and natural resource issues. This is a project that we are implementing right now with 7 ethnic communities from the north and south of Thailand. We're building community researchers who have intuitive knowledge in detecting and monitoring wildlife and plants in protected areas from forests to maritime reserves. So So people who are Karen to people who are sea nomads or Shaolei. We are applying biological science and GIS technology to help interpreting and communicating these ethnic knowledge to public so that more people have better understanding of how a human can healthily coexist with nature. Last aspect of culture and sustainable development is to look into how we can utilize creative industries. So in 2004, UNESCO launched a global program on creative cities network to utilize cultural and creative resources for sustainable and resilient urban development. This program has been very popular among city leaders, country leaders, for its side benefit on tourism and national pride. But as a result, at present, there are altogether 246 creative cities. So such a fast-growing program, right, across the world. So many in Cambodia, Indonesia, Malaysia, the Philippines, Vietnam, and Thailand. 7 creative cities in Thailand at the moment, which has been the forefront in the country's new soft power action plan to drive economic growth from cultural assets. So you can see from here that creativity has been well understood by governments as one kind of a financial drivers as well. Nonetheless, that should not be the only aspect of benefit from the creative cities, like the kind of status that has been difficultly achieved. What this program aims to contribute is to form a resilient city, like resilient cities that, so when we look into this, this is a quote from our Director General. But when we look into the meaning of resilient cities, what it actually means is beyond just economic development, just tourism, or just any, GDP, but it also includes social and environmental development, which is as well as good governance. It's like all these 4 different aspects that could comprise into something that becoming a resilient community or cities as contributed by culture. In other words, a creative cities will be a city that uses power of human intelligence and creativity existing inside a city to make itself more durable to future crises or changes. A good example is the development of Bangkok in recent years. This is like it has now become my favorite city. Like I was born here, but I've never actually liked it the way I like it these days, because it's growing to become more of a livable city. So that's the kind of a concept of development these days, with more facilities and infrastructure, not only for tourists, but also for residents to live and progress with and for the benefit of the city. So that's the kind of something that could be very easily translated into a high-level policy like this. So if what I have been showing does not strike you well enough, I would like to take you back to the year 2020, when a nightmare, just one of the nightmares began, talking about it from the aspect of a UNESCO report. This is a series of our reports. You will see that back then, after 2020, we did this report in 2021. It shows that 71% of World Heritage sites across the world were forced to close. 65% of artists were forced to stop being artists, and 80% drops in museum revenue among over 100,000 museums across the world. That's a lot of economic loss at the both institutional level and individual level. So UNESCO with other UN agencies have been working together in a campaign called Build Back Better. This campaign tries to close the gap in public-private people partnerships in order to reinforce social resilience if we are to be hit again by such kind of a pandemic or crisis. Examples that I have mentioned before are among many that are being mainstreamed right now under this campaign. But a part of that, I want to show you one of the little things that we are doing as well. So this is like, for closing, as you know, the UNESCO World Heritage Program is a very technical, scientific thing, because to become a World Heritage, you have a lot of scientific ways to prove that it's the best, it's the biggest, and also all the technical words, everything that we put in the website is completely not entirely readable, even to us here. So UNESCO has lately tag teamed with National Geographic to create a friendlier version of World Heritage information for the travelers. Particularly, this is called World Heritage Journey. And currently there are 2 chapters for the journeys in the website, the Europe chapter and the Buddha chapter mainly for Asia. As you will see that there are in here, in creating a chapter, we involved a lot of partners, both private and public sectors, to be able to fund the creation of the new information. So for Europe chapter, this is kind of fun. It's the one that got started first. So there are a lot of different sites that are included in here, and it has been like designed to divide into 4 different storylines, from ancient Europe to romantic Europe, royal Europe, and underground Europe. So learning about different World Heritage sites can become more fun and engaging to normal people now. For the Buddha chapter, we just started 2 years ago. So there are very few now, and only India, Nepal, Bangladesh, and Thailand are included in there, 5 sites. So we're looking for opportunities to increase more World Heritage sites in this particular website in the future. Just to show you that if we're to click into one of the sites, this is Sukhoi Thai in Thailand, the kind of information is more casual and easy to understand than our official World Heritage website. It is also give importance to voices and perspective of local communities, what they see as their living heritage or cultural industries that they want travelers or general public to experience, aside from the grandeur of the World Heritage site. This is just a small, like very small action from UNESCO to show that even an international organizations that are rather serious and probably boring like UNESCO are still changing toward more people-centric approach. So that's just to end it with a very light tone, and I look forward to more to listen to more presentations and discussions in this website in the webinar. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Khun Montakan. If you don't mind, oh, there you go. Feel free to drop links of different platforms and things into the chat box so that our participants can visit your various sites. Yeah, and such an overwhelming support for this webinar today on a topic that's often overlooked, which is the linkage between culture and heritage to sustainability and circular economy. So next, we're going to scope down to circular economy in a session called Reflecting ASEAN Values on Circular Economy by Imelda Bakudo, or Dada, who is the Climate Finance and Engagement Strategist at FAO. Please welcome Dada to the stage.
Hi, Sarah. Thank you to the organizers. Thank you to Switch Asia for the invitation. And I was a little bit surprised to be asked again to speak here, especially hearing how Dr. Tony remembers my comment about rice and circular economy. So, and my mother's teaching about rice. So I would like to have, for today, I'm going to have a sharing on how climate action and our cultural values are reflected in our climate action in order to achieve, next slide please, food security. So I wanted to discuss this and get this as a jump off point for my sharing today, because there's no other region in the world other than maybe France and Italy who's as food obsessed as the Southeast Asian region. We love our food here, and yet we are being challenged by the impacts of climate change. We're going to see that data has indicated that 55% of the world in Asia is actually affected by hunger. For sure, recent innovations and technological approaches has alleviated food insecurity. However, there's still the challenge of undernourishment, micronutrient deficiencies that we still need to address. Next slide, please. And it's a no-brainer, actually, that the drivers of food insecurity is really mainly climate change. Probably you're aware of extreme weather events, drought, increasing salinity, flooding, we have record-breaking heat that we are experiencing. So our climate action, in order to achieve the principles of circular economy, is more needed than ever. Next slide. And so the world, our leaders are not blind and are listening to this. And so if you are aware, the Paris Agreement is hoping to maintain the temperature to 1.5 degrees, because 2.4 degrees, which we are experiencing right now, is simply not enough. I was in a webinar yesterday. No, it's an in-person event where a journalist is saying, from the Green Climate Fund, is saying that 1.5 degrees, not reaching it, is actually gonna mean extinction to us. I don't want to sound like a doomsayer. Next slide, please. So ASEAN responded as a region. How are we gonna achieve our 2050 vision of food security? But at the same time, we signed up, all of us, to the Paris Agreement and many other multilateral environmental agreements. So ASEAN has this very, I know this illustration sounds complicated, looks complicated, but a lot of the elements here are really speaking to our cultural values as a region. But let's focus on the goal here. ASEAN is thinking at 2050, because that's when many of the countries, member states of ASEAN, are hoping for net zero, to achieve net zero. The vision there is resilient, biodiverse, pollution-free agri-food system that provides healthy and nutritious food for all by 2050 in ASEAN. So we have a huge vision that we need to achieve. And circular economy is one of the needed approaches in order to achieve this. Many of the words here really speaks about the cultural values that we already have. The triggers of change, next slide, please. The triggers of change that will bring about these changes so we can achieve what we want to do in 2050 is actually rooted from our internal culture. I love being invited to this event because it made me think outside of the technical scientific discussions on nationally determined contribution, monitoring emissions reduction, but really looking internally. What we wanted actually for all of us, especially for a food obsessed region like us, is sustainable and healthy food to be available for all of us. And what ASEAN, in a 2-year process that I was involved with, in narrating or articulating how are we going to get there, is really drawing from what's inside us. They said we want integrated approach, coordination, and the political will to get there. We want to strengthen policy, financial support, and spread awareness of climate change impacts, and to have more elevated, more scaled up scientific sharing and knowledge building that I would say builds on local knowledge. So the principles and the pathways that we need to do in order to achieve our 2050 vision, and with circular economy backing us, is really in this picture. There's coordination, there's political will to bring this house from one end, to bring about the change, to another where they're going, and we're going to 2050. Next slide, please. Let's break down a little bit. Recently, a few weeks ago, ASEAN validated how they're going to do carbon neutrality in 2050 for agriculture. The first approach that they mentioned is diet shift. Now, I would say diet shift is a trend. In Europe, they're promoting vegetarianism. But I think that for the region, we still need to define what does diet shift mean for us. Because I believe that it's not going to be a popular move to go towards vegetarianism. So we need to have dialogues on diet shift. Another main area is reduction in food loss and waste. And this because many of you may be aware that 1/3 of greenhouse gas emissions from methane, nitrous oxide, and carbon is really coming from our food system, from transport, but mainly a lot from food loss and waste, where methane is coming out. So our cultural value, I remember my mother saying, if you don't finish your rice, you will be mabubusong, or your hands will stick all together. You have to finish everything. So that really speaks to both circular economy and climate action. Eat every grain of rice. Also, in our region, every part of livestock is consumed. I remember that in the US, I was given an assignment at grad school. What are we gonna do with innards, intestines, liver of animals, because they don't use that, chicken feet, etc. But our region is very much already supporting lessening greenhouse gas emissions because we eat what we call adidas or chicken feet. We eat intestines. It's very much a circular economy model. Animal sacrifices. If anyone has gone to Tanah Toraja, the center of animal sacrifice, I know that animal lovers such as myself might not like it, but you look at how every community benefit from it. Every member of the community gets a sharing for it. And when you eat fish, did your mother say, finish everything before you turn it around, or else a fisherman may die? But, before you turn to the other side. So these cultural values are really climate action. That also speaks towards circular economy. So I love that these are all coming here. Next slide, please. Another approach that ASEAN said in their newly endorsed guideline on how to achieve carbon neutrality in agriculture is to incentivize innovation. And I added local knowledge. And here, this reminds me of how we have climate information services. The esteemed speaker mentioned climate information services ahead of me as well. And it reminds me again of how maybe not just me, but my mother and maybe your mother also growing up in this little village would tell me to look at the mountain and know that later on, if it has clouds around it, later on it will rain. If the mountain is not covered in rain, it will, if the mountain is not covered in clouds, it will not rain for that day. So we need such, and I know that there are so many initiatives and climate information services that really work on promoting local knowledge and really working with agro-meteorological services so that climate information is localized and also coming from the sources. Crop insurance. We know that these days with the presence of extreme weather events, I heard that crop insurance companies no longer want to insure. They no longer want to insure against flooding, against drought, against increasing salinity for the loss of that crops and damages. What are we going to rely on in this region? We're going to rely on our ancient, whoops, oh my God, I'm talking so long.
We're going to apologize about that.
Huh? All right, we're gonna rely on our ancient ways, our cultural ways that we feel brotherhood and sisterhood with our neighbors. This will be our form of crop insurance. If one village is suffering, the next village would do this. And in fact, ASEAN has actually stepped up its ASEAN Rice Reserve. And I think this speaks to our old traditions on why we have activated the ASEAN Rice Reserve, especially during the pandemic. There's also the Subak system here in Bali, where there's the communal water management. Sarah, what should I do? I'll just wrap up, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you.
Next slide, please. I thought there's a lot more. So one of the approaches as well is strengthen partnership building. And I think it comes from our inside that we really don't want to move alone. This is a region that's built not on individualism, but on community working together. Here's a picture of COP28 UAE, where we put the farmers at the center of the stage. And you may be aware that at COP28, there was 160 countries signed through their heads of state, a declaration on sustainable agriculture, resilient food system, and climate action. And you know, when I was asking ASEAN to sign this declaration one by one, each ASEAN member is saying, what did my neighbor do? Did President Jokowi sign this? And I said yes. And a lot of the ASEAN countries signed as well. So we're gonna build on this togetherness. We're gonna build on the what we call in Filipino, pakikisama, being one with each other. And that's how we're gonna move this climate action. Last slide, please. Because from the concept note, in all our diverse values, from sufficiency, economy of Thailand, the gotong rayong of Indonesia, and the pakikisama of the Philippines, respect for nature from Vietnam, bayanihan, our source of strength is not rooted on one individual, but it is on all of us and a community. We feel as a community, we implement things as a community. And this is the same principle of circular economy, in which everything is connected to one another. And that's the end of my presentation. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you so much, Dada. It makes me smile hearing all the information that you said, to see how much similarity of here in Thailand and Philippines. It actually brings me back to childhood. I mean, I was taught to finish every single grain of rice, because every grain of rice is sweat and tears of farmers and their effort into growing rice. And we're taught not to flip the fish. So we eat the whole fish, and then we'll lift the bone out and then eat the bottom, right? Because
Yes.
instead, if you flip the fish, a fisherman boat will capsize. So it's so similar in things that I heard. Thank you so much.
I see Dr. Tony smiling too, but this is how we're going to get to 2050 at net zero.
Well, so excited to get into our big panel discussion, moderated by Dr. Anthony Pamonrat, the Deputy Executive Director of ASEAN Center for Circular Development Studies and Dialogue. And joining him on this panel, we have Kun Suksawoy Kao Tiem Chan, the founder of Zero Waste Laos and CEO of Connect 2P. Next, we have Professor Zul Abdul Razak, former dean from the international, former rector for the International Islamic University of Malaysia. Next, we have Carlo Chendelentar, who is the co-founder and partner of Gobi Core Philippines. And we have Dr. Seri Pongpit, who is the director of Community Enterprise Institute. Lastly, but not least, we have Dr. Nguyen Hong Huan, who is the director of Institute for Circular Economy Development at Vietnam National University in Ho Chi Minh City. Please welcome our moderator and our speaker to the stage.
Thank you, Dr. Sirasa. And thank you, Kun Montakan from UNESCO, and to set the stage, and for Dada to actually link and fuse, your experience from values and how it means what it means for circularity, and fusing these traditional and conceptual values, setting the stage for our expert panel discussion. I'd just like to say at the outset that my objective is for me, this is a beginning, and our session today is the beginning, then certainly will be carried on for some time in the near future, because I think the dialogue on circularity, or even its definition, and how it's put in practice, and ASEAN centrality, values, understanding, there should be more sharing of this dialogue between ourselves and other regions, such as the European region. I do feel a little bit bad in the sense that we don't have much time, but I'd like to start with the Zul, really. And we had this discussion earlier today. Which values or traditions or concepts or philosophy in your country that resonate with circular economy principles? And I use the term circular economy in quotation marks. So maybe you could say a few words about that, Professor Zul. Can you turn on your
Thank you
microphone?
very much, Anthony, and thank you very much for the invitation. I am really very excited to be here after listening two speakers talking of something that resonates with us very well in Malaysia. This whole idea of circular economy, I think the terminology may be new, but I think in terms of practice, as mentioned, the Subak system, for example, is not something which is new. From our research has been there for more than 900 years. And therefore, the idea of so-called circular economy has been with us for a long time, except that we have lost it. So in Malaysia, we are trying to rediscover this and put it back where it should belong, in the sense that what is the terminology that we want to use? I talked to Anthony earlier. When you want to introduce circular economy, and if you still use the word circular economy, then I think it's going to be a difficult task to move ahead, because that excess baggage will always remind us of what it was from the Eurocentric point of view. So the word is, as far as we are concerned, traditionally is called sejahtera. Gotong royong is part of it, which means balance, which means harmony, and which also means sharing. How do you get this on as far as not only economy from the monetary point of view, but economy from the values point of view? I think the fish example is a good example, but broaden it up. For example, how can I, for example, share the values that I've got with other people around me so that we can basically level up society? And this is where I think values like compassion, values like empathy, values like sympathy becomes part and parcel of the so-called economic understanding, not just something that you can count, but also something which is intangible at the same time. Now, these are the values that I think that drives the so-called circular economy, because it is incumbent upon us to act so that sufferings are alleviated from other people. We want to be prosperous, but we don't want to be prosperous at the expense of somebody else's. We want everybody to prosper at the same time. And that is, I think, fundamentally what sejahtera is all about, how we can live together in equity, in justice, and in fairness, which is not a new word, except that it is difficult to conceptualize it given the word economy. So I was suggesting to Anthony, we need to find a new word, and I'm suggesting the word economy. The word eco, and then you put a hyphen and nomi, then you will understand that your economy will start from something which is ecological, something which is balanced, something which is nature-oriented, rather than from what I understand now. I think from what my reading is, the word economy comes from the Greek word, which means household management. So we need to find another creative way of giving a new metaphor of what the circular economy is, so that the traditional values can come in organically rather than trying to force it into the whole idea of economy. Now, what we do back home, I think I would want to share with you this book. I don't know whether you can see it. This is a case study of what we talk about compassion. We are talking about delivering compassion. So in the economic activity that you do, what is the compassion that you deliver? Apart from just the monetary part, the intangible part, as measured by or as understood by compassion within our own environment. So compassion becomes now a big discussion of how to embed it in the so-called circular economy as a kind of a value that will reorient the economy that we have got today. I think this word economy, to me, I'm not an economist, but it can be very baffling. People are talking about growth economy, linear economy, and there's so many other economies. And where is circular economy into this? So we really need to define where does the circular economy is, and how do the traditional value actually put its own mark in this whole idea of a so-called circular economy. Now, I want to also give another example. For example, when we talk about bananas, I think you probably know bananas will produce a fruit once and then you have to throw the tree away. You cannot do anything else with the tree. Now, what we have done, for example, we use the bananas, and the peel of the bananas are converted into powder, and it's just like any powder. In fact, it's more nutritious than the powder that we have in the market. You can turn it into noodles and so on and so forth. The trunk we have been converted into paper, and the paper is 40 times more harder than the normal paper. It is used for ornamental. The Japanese go crazy about it, you know. Of course, the banana leaves are used for many wrappers and stuff like that. So the whole banana trees now has been quote unquote secularized. When you take the fruits and then you sort of use the whole banana trees to make sort of products out of it. And of course, there is an economic value to it. But this is a secularity that we talked about, apart from the fish example that you talked. So there are many things that have been done in our dimension, and we are now putting this back into our own curriculum. And the curriculum now is taking shapes where students are using this to work with the community to understand where the community comes from and how the circular economy from the traditional sense can be embedded into what we'll see as far as the future for sustainability moving forward. Anthony, thank you very much. I will stop there.
Thank you, Dusu. Thank you for giving that rather inspiring example and inspiring views. I think certainly we are on the midst of redefining the terminology, and I think starting with your discussions on the concepts and values in Malaysia is certainly an excellent example. And with carrying on redefinition or redefining meanings, I'd like to ask Professor Kwan, in your country, in Vietnam, how is a circular economy, and we have to change that term. How is circular economy explained? I did a cursory search on values of that are in the concept note on tic chu or thrift, or chan chong or chan trong on respect. Do the general population, non-experts in Vietnam, how do they view or do they actually understand circular economy?
Yes, thank you so much, Dr. Anthony. Good afternoon, everyone from Vietnam. It's my great honor to be here in the seminar, so to join in the panel discussion. Yeah, directly to your question, I think circular economy related activity have been popular in Vietnam in the past, but of course they it's not to, let's say, general define at this moment. Previously, we have been used to with most likely recycling activities. So recycling industry have been very developed in Vietnam across different sectors, including plastic, electronic waste, and some others. And also in agriculture. So one of popular model we used to have in the past, like VAC, it stands for garden, bond, and livestock. So these three item are linked together. And people are most likely refer to these two as circular economy in many of Vietnamese people. But actually now in Vietnam, circular economy is become one of very top agenda towards sustainability or green growth. So it has been considered as the new economic model for Vietnam, and it's putting into, let's say, top political agenda. And currently we have been developing circular economy plan and the coming national action plan. And it will be supporting across different sector, different industry. So the objective can be linked to the national carbon neutrality plan and how it can support the green growth, green transition program, or supporting sustainable production, consumption, climate change adaptation, mitigation, and also the linkage to inclusiveness, inclusive development. And more importantly, we are working how to mainstream circular economy in social economic development plan at different level. I mean here, national level and local levels. So we're also aware of this will be a very challenge, especially looking at the barriers, institutional barriers, because it's really cross-sectoral topic. So we are now waiting for the new decree from our Prime Minister on regulatory sandbox for implementing circular economy. So this is a bit an overall picture of this one, of circular economy in Vietnam. And back to understanding about circular economy on so cross different level. I mean, here awareness or capability, in circular economy, in terms of from industry or business or normal local citizens. I think we are still a little bit, not really everyone can understand that and really can take up this message, especially from the central government. So we are building up a number of capacity building or raising awareness or education program to helping different actors. So this is just my response to your question. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Kwan. When you were discussing this, I was thinking of one of our colleagues in Japan who said that, you know, waste management and cleanliness and things like that, they had to, it was such a difficult road path, and then they had to develop many years ago comic books, because Japanese love comic books, and they use anime and comic books, and they talk to the authors of those books, and they said, we have to rewrite this, you know, for children, and a series of comic books arose from that. And then I remember it was Dr. Raiko from the World Bank. She said, "Oh, Tony, it was so difficult. You know, we tried for decades before we were successful." Carlo, you know, what do you think of this with regards to how do you express this? How do you talk about this? You know, with the general market seller, like in Thailand, or my colleagues, not. My colleagues in other fields, they say, what do you mean? I don't understand. A circular economy? You know, I say, you know, it's just like sufficiency economy. Okay. I sort of understand that. But in your work, you know, when you deal with clients, you know, is there a more, you know, basic Filipino values that you can discuss this so that it can be more effective?
Thanks, Anthony. So I think for the rest of the panels here too, they would agree that circular economy is such a new word to everyone. Even until now, we're still learning what sustainability means based on the numerous frameworks. And the next thing you know, we have circular economy as the next thing, right? So I think just the harmonization and defining what circular economy is always going to be an awareness and capacity challenge for any country. For the Philippines, though, storytelling and reflecting on past events are always useful to start, you know, opening up and unlocking the imagination of the best solution, right? So I technically start with a pain point and some examples that our audience or our demographic would have to relate to. So I think the best example here is climate change, right? Just recently, there was a super typhoon that went through Metro Manila, and literally some stores, it went up to their second floor ceiling, right? And everyone's just like, when they look at the flooding, the first thing they see is plastic floating around. And now the question is, who's going to tackle the issue of plastic waste? Hence, the circular economy conversation started by, number one, talking about what is circular economy and how is it different from the current linear economy. Now, I think for our advocacy under Circulo, we've done so many reports and directories on what circular economy is. And I think the best way I talk to all these organizations when I work with them is, number one, policies and regulations are going to come out. So let's be proactive with this. And then secondly, if you're thinking of what the difference is on the general term of sustainability, I just say this is sustainability in the modern world, or the fourth industrial revolution. And this is something that all of us have to tackle. So that's worked out pretty well. I think also it helps that there are more events talking about the circular economy. The challenge has always been what circular economy means for one industry, right? So maybe you have taxonomies and examples for food waste, for electronics, for plastics, but How about wastewater? How about energy? These industries have to figure out at least like structure a way on how they define a circular economy amidst the different frameworks that they branch out to. But I think that's the current predicament here in the Philippines. So I would say we have so many laws like the Extended Producer's Responsibility, the Solid Waste Management Act. They are technically part of circular economy, but now the Congress will be passing a circular economy bill, which we've advised as well is, we can't put circular economy as just plastic, right? I think it's basically the starting framework for any industries to follow through. And if you follow through these specific buckets, you can have the same benefits and incentives moving forward. So I think to wrap it up, it's important to create a way to capture anyone's imagination, simplify as much as possible, and then connect it to the pain point. Once you create that, then you create a compelling story that's easier for everyone to understand. But I guess in case outside of that, if there's a requirement for corporates, the only thing I said, most of the time things start moving when you have policies that involve mandates to have a sustainability report from the SEC or their international counterparts really mandating that. So I think it's both ends now moving. Before there was nothing, right? Now they're all moving to the right direction, and it's now finding the right practitioners that would build the bridge.
Excuse me. With regards to your point, I'd like to also ask Professor Zoll just to come back to this on, we have these traditional values, but then at the same time we are always bombarded with globalization, consumerism, change in consumption, advertising, marketing on a daily basis. What are your thoughts on these issues, Professor Zoll, and how do you think we can find the balance, I guess?
Yeah. I think this is one of the bigger problems that we have in terms of having choices that is actually duplicative. It's more of a marketing thing rather than question of needs. I think this is where the whole idea of consumerism needs to be revised. In the context of Malaysia, I think we are now looking at how we can define sejahtera, the word that we are saying, that talks about what is required on the first level. In other words, there must be a basic requirement that everybody must attend to before we jump into. We are not saying that we need to curb the market or being sort of restrictive. People can have whatever they want, provided everybody have got the minimum standards that they want to have. So how do you ascertain this minimum standard in the context of sejahtera that everybody needs to aspire to that before we move on? Now, the bigger problem now, Anthony, this tangible stuff we can almost explain why there are mineral waters alone, why there are 10 brands of mineral water. How different can a water be? But we need 10 brands of it and the variation and so on and so forth. But what worries us now is this whole idea of AI, the IT thing that comes in the same thing like a consumerism thing. And these are the algorithm that we must use and imported sometimes that we do not know even to ascertain whether this is part and parcel of our tradition or meeting our own standards and meeting our own values. Otherwise, I think this is another form of colonialism that we will use their standards, their values. When I think their means outside ASEAN, and eventually we will be persuaded, to live and to think like them because we have not attend to our values. So we are trying to do now in Malaysia, at least in my university, to find out what are the values that you need to put in the algorithm before you use them. We know this algorithm is important, but what are the values that we need to put in so that at the end of the day, the decision that was made is a more balanced decision rather than, say, a Eurocentric decision or coming from just one region or the other. I think that is the most difficult part because it is very intangible and not many of us understand what this technology is all about, and yet it is very pervasive in our education system. But it must start, I think, from the education system so that we can move forward and understand where the future belongs as far as you are concerned. Thanks,
Thank
Anthony.
you. I think you identified certain issues on AI and the ideology or the theory behind AI, what that theory is, and what balanced decision we need to take. Thank
Yeah.
you. Is it possible? Could I ask Kun Suksaway? Is it then actually possible, in your experience, to use these traditional concepts and values, to shape policy or to shape national development with regard to, national policies, city planning, something like that, or even how you want to run a large company? Is it actually possible to use these traditional values and concepts?
Yes, first of all, thank you for having me. Yes, for me, I think it's possible, but it needs some efforts more. For example, my work is more really working on the ground with grassroots level and also with young generation. So I understand, I think now we have same similar value or practice like the country in ASEAN. Let's say what we like to do in Laos is more about repair and growing our own foods or sharing. So this is something that we have the same, but how we can push is to policy level. I think it requires a lot of awareness and effort to put this as it's not just a traditional or it's not just only something that we practice on the ground, but we can push it to the national levels or the policy levels. However, to transform it to be a circular economy. So I think even though we have something on the ground, but all those facilities, for example, when we talk about circular economy, right, it's not just about the idea or not the concept, but more about, okay, what are the facility there? So related to waste management, for example, in the regions or in the ASEAN country, we do a lot of tradings. Our country is the consumer, for example, most of the product in ASEAN. But then when we talk about circular economy, it's not just really talking about within our country, but we need a lot of collaborations in ASEAN levels as well, like e-waste, plastic recycling. So I would say all the value or what we practice on the ground can push forward to the policy, but international. But I would want to see in the ASEAN level rather than just only the national, because since I have been working on the ground, I see that okay, only one single country we cannot tackle or move forward to circular economy alone. Some recycling material, some material we can just have it here, but it's not enough amount for recycling. So maybe Vietnam or Thailand can be the country that, so that means the circular economy should be our countries should collaborate and work together in ASEAN as well, not just only one single country. Yeah, thank you.
You're on mute, Dr. Tony.
Sorry, I'm trying to ask very direct and quick questions because I really do want some further discussions, ad hoc discussions from the panelists. But let me turn quickly to Dr. Seri, and I think it's not just related to the traditional concepts and focus, but in our discussion, I feel that in my work in the past some years ago and at a much international level, Dr. Seri, in your work, working with community networks, not just in Thailand but around the world, and in response to the question I asked Kun Suksaway, how can traditional concepts, how can we shape national development or shape international development or national policies? And I think here networks, civil society or community groups, and I think from my limited experience in working in public health and HIV AIDS world, civil society has certainly a strong influence on national and international policy. So I'd like to ask your wisdom on that in your past work, Dr. Seri.
Dr. Seri, you on mute ค่ะ
ได้ยินหรือยังครับ
ได้ยินแล้วค่ะ thank you
Okay, hello everyone. I would like to tell you some stories. I hope it fits into the 6 minutes I am given. Otherwise, you can interrupt me, Dr. Anthony. When I started to teach philosophy at Thammasat University, after my study in philosophy my whole life, till my PhD in Munich in Germany, I came back and I was fed up with philosophy. So I went into the villages to find out what happened in the real life of the people. And since 46 years, I have been working in community development and also at international level. After some time, I set up a foundation and I quit university. And this village foundation is called Village Foundation. It's a very small one, not even 20 people working there, with a very low budget. But we were working in the whole country of Thailand, We identify wise people, we identify best practices at community-based organizations, and we link them and let them share their experience and best practices. So they have become a very powerful community-based network in their own provinces. After that, I was selected to be a manager of HIV/AIDS program in northern Thailand. That was about 30 years ago. And I encouraged people with HIV/AIDS to form up a group and was called New Life Friend Association. And that group start to campaign on HIV/AIDS and also on the issue on access to drugs and healthcare and so on. And that has become a model to other groups of HIV/AIDS, people with HIV/AIDS in all over Thailand in the following years, about 600 of them. And they were very powerful because they could raise awareness of the people on HIV/AIDS and also to advocacy about health and HIV/AIDS at the same time. After that, I was a team leader of HIV/AIDS of the UN AIDS, for some years. And the reason I was selected as a team leader, I was told because of my experience in networking organizations. But I didn't stay that too long. I got sick of working too hard and traveling too much and without doing much of the things that I wanted to do, So I came back and worked with the community-based organizations again. I'm telling you this story because I think what we need to do in practice in order to make the circular economy viable or in a more realistic in our society today, I think we have to do two things. One is to do policy advocacy, because without policy of the governments, we can do very little. But what I have been doing in Thailand, in some countries, when I was working on HIV/AIDS and community development, I started from bottom. And that is what reminds me of what the SDGs principle, 3 of them, One is bottom up, 2 is human dignity. That means to give priority to 5 target groups. That means children, women, elderly people, handicaps, and marginalized people. And thirdly, sufficiency. That means sufficient economy. I think what we need to do is how to link people together, to networking, and to do not only at the level of our communities or our provinces, but at national level and at ASEAN level. When I was working at Village Foundation, linking the wise people of Thailand and community-based organizations, we had exchange also with the networks of people in Europe, the farmers' organizations, and we have learned from them many experience. They told us how they start from their own communities after the Second World War and having a small networking organizations at provincial level, at France, at Europe, finally. And when we met all of them, they told us and they encouraged us that we should do the same thing at ASEAN level. And I think that is very important. And that comes to how to do that. I learned when I was in the UNAIDS that the best practice at country level was in Cambodia, where UNDP catalyzed or link or facilitate the meeting of government and non-government organizations to do what they call common strategy. They put up everything they have as the program on HIV/AIDS, and then they try to do the division of work and how to share their experience and how to work together. And that's what we need to do at ASEAN level, on circular economy or at sustainable development. So I would like to suggest at the end that what we should need to do very much now is to link the countries together, not only at policy, at ASEAN, at office, and so on, but at community-based level, as Kun Suksawai just said, we have a lot of good practices, best practices at community-based organizations, at community level, but we have no networking of the activities. We need to facilitate their sharing experience, their learning together at all levels. So I hope that this panel could come up with some practical solution, that from now on we may somehow start to think about how to continue not only on panel discussions, but on how to do networking activities. That means we have to do it regularly and in different ways. We have to come and see one another more often, at all levels. So that is what I would like to share with you all today.
Thank you, Dr. Seri. Certainly, I think today we've discussed key points such as, how do we link community-based organizations? How do we link networking? How do we work with wise people around the region, and to promote policy advocacy? I think storytelling. I think, Carlo, you mentioned storytelling and compelling stories. I recall a lot of my interest now is in geopolitics in Africa, and I realized that, a lot of the African presidents, when they go out and speak, they're telling, it's a storytelling, because I think in African culture, they appreciate storytelling, and because it provides the context. I think I have a few more minutes just to open this up for any panelists that you want to add. That is correct, right, Sirasa? Yes, so I'd like to open up for further sharing of thoughts on how we can move this ahead, or any points you'd like to highlight.
Dr. Tony, let me add, I forgot to share with you that about 70 years ago, there was a German who lived in England, and he was named somehow a job as a consultant to the government of Burma at that time. You know him? You know his name? E.F. Schumacher. And he learned about Buddhist economy in Burma at that time under the government of UNU as prime minister. So when he went back, he wrote a small book called Small is Beautiful. Maybe you have heard of that. And the fourth chapter of this small booklet is called Buddhist philosophy, Buddhist economy, sorry. And I heard that our late king, Rama IX, translated into Thai, this Buddhist economy. And I suppose that is one of the important influence to sufficiency economy that we have today. And so I think we have to stick on small is beautiful and sufficiency economy. And we have to, if we have to redefine it, we have to be based really on this principle, on circular economy.
Professor Kwon, any thoughts on this?
Yes, thank you so much. I'm sorry. I will try to say a little bit before I have to leave. My flight is really close now. Yeah. So my last sharing, actually, I'm also very much agree with Dr. Seri from FIT. Yes, actually, this is one of the topic I really want to share because I just recall when we read one paper a few years ago about the historical development of circular economy around the world, and very much we are influenced by Western knowledge or science and technology. But I was very happy when I read there was one column where they also mentioned about non-Western related circular economy and philosophy related. And there was also people talk about the linkage between circular economy and with Buddhism's, Tao's, or Hong Kong religions in India or China. So actually, I like very much on how we link circular economy with religions, because this really help to connect people, and we really I think if we can really take into this into account, we can really let's say context specific connecting people, having support or working together with many people. And I think that is our role for having the whole society to implementing circular economy. And I found there quite some, actually I'm Buddhism. I'm not really very in depth in Buddhism, but there's some principle that I found it also very close to us, especially like I also share with Dr. Sherry that how people are connecting, how people are working together, how different sectors are linked together, and also the concept of regeneration. So I think, in final words, the cultural value or social value, especially from Southeast Asian country, we can learn a lot and share a lot together. And with that, we can put into the concept of circular economy apart from the technology-based solution. But of course, I think the social aspect needs to be very much considered in the coming years. Yeah. So that is my final word. Thank you so much. I'm sorry I have to leave.
Thank you. Have a nice trip. I'd like to ask. I'm putting you on the spot, Dazo. I'd like to ask for you to make any concluding remarks from the panel discussion, if you could. And how do you think we should move forward on this? Professor Dazo, please. Any thoughts?
I am very happy after listening to Dr. Sri. Basically, this is essentially what we need to do. I can only speak on my experience that we are trying to connect all this concept which is local. Ikigai in Japan, Sejatras, self-sufficiency, Traikina Karata, and all these are ASEAN indigenous ideas that has a common values that I think we need to connect. Once you connect this, I think you become very strong in trying to connect the dots among ASEAN, and this can be owned by ASEAN. And then we can move away from ASEAN and go to Asia and find out what are the other common values, like Ubuntu, for example. In Africa, I'm quite familiar with it. It's almost the same thing. So we are talking about the same thing, but because of we are now compartmentalized geographically otherwise, then these concepts now becomes, almost individualized. It's not a human heritage kind of a concept that all of us can believe in, although it is different in its pronunciation. I think that's the first thing. How do we connect the dots among ASEAN? And I do believe in this case has to be bottom up. I mean, government probably will not even be easy to recognize it because most of them are well educated outside and they don't have much respect for indigenous ideas until and unless we live with indigenous people. So it has to be bottom up. And once that has happened, I think basically now we can talk about, what are the common values that we need to teach. And I learned this from sustainable development. Sustainable development has been there until they start education for sustainable development in 2005, it does not fly. So education, I think, is an important element. It could be in a comic strip, it could be in storytelling, but education must be there where people are made aware. And once the people are aware, I think it's easier to use the local terminology rather than to use the imported terminology. We have got two in Malaysia. One is Pembangunan Lestari, which is a translation of sustainable development, but nobody understands this. But the moment we say sejahtera, then everybody understands. So you use the colloquial and the local terms, then I think we get people to understand. And last but not least, I think is to be very mindful of what sort of values are we embedded in. Again, I think I subscribe very much into this Buddhist teaching of compassion. And this again is something that we are trying to do. How do we understand compassion, not through religion, but through spirituality? I think religion sometimes can create problems. But the values of spirituality, I think, is almost common. It doesn't matter what religion is all about, but the values must be consistent. And then I think we can get people together. So if we do these three things right, I think we can move forward quite easily, understanding what is the final objective of trying to create justice, fairness, and equity around the world, beginning with ASEAN maybe. Thank you very much, Anthony.
Thank you very much, Fasil. Over to you, Dr. Sirasa. Unless there are any other comments.
Now we're good?
Can I add
yes,
one
please.
point?
Yes, Kat.
Yeah, so one thing that I just would like to add, because since I have been working in the grassroots level and I see a lot of female are engaged more in this area and environmental protection. So probably if we could consider to engage more or having them to be a part of like circular economy, or maybe it can be a program that foster or encourage more and give them a platform that they can be a part. For example, today I would love to see more gender balance as well. Yeah, that is from my side. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Tony and our esteemed panelists for sharing such important and interesting wisdom for us today. Without taking too much time, I see a couple of questions in the chat box. So we'll take a few moments to address that before we closing the webinar today. I see question number one from Rakesh. I assume it's for Dada. Dada, are you still here with us?
Yes.
Okay. So I see the question asking about your example that you share, that is it inclusive business rules with circularity that is being applied in ASEAN. For example, the China Bank system support SMB farmers from bamboo farming, developing industry, supporting livelihood, and so on.
Okay, the short answer is this: there's actually a responsible investment guideline for agriculture, facilitated by FAO, a consortium of groups that are supporting and promoting inclusive business principles. So I hope they could get in touch with Grow Asia, with FAO, who's really looking into this.
Thank you, Dada. And then there's another question from Ben. I assume let's direct this question to all the speakers because we are representing the different countries and different experiences. So he's asking, is there any economic policy recommendation to incentivize locally produced alternatives or incentivize rehabilitation of resource extraction and de-incentivize a product with only contribution to cycle to product and good production. Who would like to start?
Let me try. I think in Malaysia there is, but I think it's more of a token than anything else because the advertisements from the other side is very overwhelming. So we get this almost like a what do you call subsidiary kind of a thing, you know. In a supermarket, there is one corner where you sell local products, but nobody actually buys them because you know the overwhelming marketing of the other product, and sometimes they are almost a mirror image of what this burger, for example. There's a local burger made by a local person, but that is not what we are talking about. We are talking about really, when we talk about, for example, technology, when you talk about indigenous technology, is really indigenous. It comes from the roots and understanding of what it is all about. For example, making just weaving. The kind of weaving that they make is really their own methodology, their own formula, how they calculate it and comes out with a weaving which the machines cannot compete with. So I think these are the kind of indigenous technology or product that we want to look at rather than just another commercial product, which has been encouraged but has not much impact as far as circular economy is concerned. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Zul. Who would like to go next?
I can take one.
Yes, please.
Yeah, so I think for everyone's also like I wanna say there are successful use cases already in terms of industries. We've mapped out the past 2 years outside of generative AI. Majority of the investments have been in climate tech. Now, in terms of industry for circular economy, majority are marketplace, plastic, and then now you have mobility and electronics too, right? Why am I saying this? I think in terms of what the conservative estimates for adoption for renewables and EVs, we've already surpassed that because we realized that, you know, it's definitely possible. Why am I saying this? I think it is crucial because the framework and formula that's been done, maybe on a skeletal form, is pretty much the same, right? Whether you're a linear economy 20 years back and where you are now. You have industries wanting to lobby or to create new frameworks that incentivize them to do more. But it also means that a lot of the policies need to work hand in hand, bridging that gap. I'm saying this because it's important to know that sometimes to create new innovations, you need to ask the hard questions. And sometimes hard questions means simple solutions. So I think, like, you know, if it's a circle, you're sort of just moving around the circle, finding the right angle where you can start joining the loop. And so I think this is exciting in this space. Like, I'm wearing a recycled textile, recycled shirt and remade into a new one, right? Through mechanical recycling. And this is proudly made in Thailand. So we're seeing a lot of use cases happening already, different parts of ASEAN, but they stand for specific industries that they're strong already. Philippines would be more on the food waste and plastics. You have Indonesia, very much the same. Thailand is textile. Vietnam's doing a lot of EV storage and battery systems. But what's next after that, right? So it's only gonna do better. I'm not worried that innovation will not come because it's already here. Now it's getting more adoption happening, and as far as like estimates go for the past 2 industries, I'm very, very bullish that the rest will follow through. And this is really, if there was anything on the business end to make everyone feel motivated, the demand's here. The supply is just missing.
Thank you very much, Carlo. Does any other speaker like to touch upon this question? No?
Maybe I can add.
Yes, please.
Yes, for now, I think there is a challenge in terms of the local products, especially related to the war room or the market as well. So I think to recommend or make it more incentive, we need to a very comprehensive policy. For example, it's not just only focused on the local product, but how about in terms of the import as well? So how we can put more in terms of the tag or in terms of the responsibilities to those producers who are the big player or who are the big importers, because this is not just only related to the environmental, but now it's also very high impact to our economy as well. Yeah, so that's from my end. Thank you.
Thank you, Ha. Any other speaker would like to answer this question before we close the webinar?
To
Yes, please, Dada.
Also, the use of geographical indication. We've seen very successful cases of kampot pepper in Cambodia. So geographical indication as a tool can also help protect locally sourced materials and local and provide communal ownership of a product. So that's one tool that we're really tying it up for higher income, climate action, and sustainable sourcing. Thank you.
Thank you, Dada. So if there's no one else, last chance. Okay, we're good. All right, then. Thank you so much for answering the question. Now we would like to conclude the webinar by inviting our chair, Lauren Dalabayan, the key expert on SCP awareness raising and regional partnership building at the Switch Asia Policy Support Component. And after her, welcome back to David Trisawit Ariyawat to give a little update on what else to look for after this series. Please welcome.
Okay, thank you, Sirasa. So just to close, we have heard from our distinguished speakers and panelists in this webinar on how cultural values in ASEAN countries often align naturally with the principles of circular economy. It reflected long-standing practices of resourcefulness, community cooperation, and stewardship and respect for nature. So I will just reiterate some key points that I've gotten from our speakers. We heard that community and cultural practices, which are deeply rooted in the traditions and lifestyles in the ASEAN region, it could be the foundation. It could be the foundational elements of circular economy, and it could address global and local environmental, social, and economic challenges that we are facing today, like climate change, while also leveraging the region's strengths. And in our discussion, we've highlighted the ASEAN cultures, how the deep-rooted spiritual beliefs and traditional knowledge we have can embody the circular economy principles of preservation, of regeneration, and conservation. And it was also highlighted the importance of the ASEAN community's collective action, which is in the different ASEAN countries. This could support community-based circular economy initiatives and also traditional sharing systems, which create more resilient economies. And we also look at how integrating these cultural values with modern circular economy practices, highlighting innovations, ASEAN countries can develop sustainable systems that are both economically viable and at the same time, which is culturally resonant, that is more meaningful and effective in the regional context. And as what Professor Zhu mentioned, it is important to understand circular economy using our local language that supports ASEAN actions and practices, creating a foundation for circular economy principles to take root and flourish for us to transition to circularity. And one key point is the importance of education, which has been mentioned many times. The importance of raising understanding and awareness on circular economy, the importance of storytelling, providing examples based on best practices and traditional knowledge on circular economy, and of course, the importance of policy support to this transition. So this webinar have discussed all these issues, highlighting the interlinkages of social, cultural, environment, and economic pillars of sustainable development. And this can be achieved through sustainable consumption, production, and circular economy. Networking is very much needed, and also the importance of circular economy platforms, such as the ASEAN Circular Economy Stakeholder Platform. So the Switch Asia program, just to provide more information about what we do, we recognize this importance and we continue regional stakeholder platforms and networks to transition to SCP and circular economy. And Switch Asia has been ongoing since 2007, supporting stakeholders, governments, and regional organizations in policy support, and also providing support to organizations such as the ASEAN Center for Sustainable Development Studies and Dialogue, or ACSDSD, through the support we provide to the ASEAN Circular Economy Stakeholder Platform, and also the implementation of this webinar series. Switch Asia is also in partnership with the Global Green Growth Knowledge Platform, where we are working with a knowledge platform across the world in different regions, and such as the ACEST. And this initiative teaches artificial intelligence to acknowledge those localized values and knowledge on circular economy, which is currently non-existent in the algorithms. Switch Asia is also supporting the ASEAN Circular Economy Business Alliance, or ASEBA, which is being led by the ASEAN CSR Network, endorsed by the ASEAN Business Advisory Council, and the ASEAN Responsible and Inclusive Business Alliance, or ARIBA. So ASEBA is a business-led initiative which is inspired and conceptualized through the technical advisory supported by Switch Asia, which supported business engagement and consensus building on circular economy. We've documented more than 80 supportive circular economy business cases. So please look at the chat to be able to access those initiatives and business cases and information about ASEBA. Lastly, on behalf of the Switch Asia Policy Support Component and our team leader, Zenaida Padiva, I thank our speakers and everyone who participated in this webinar and in all the webinar series of the ASEAN Circular Economy Stakeholder Platform. I would like to acknowledge Dr. Chirachai and Dr. Anthony David from ACSDST, who has been our important partner in Switch Asia in building awareness, knowledge, and capacity on circular economy within ASEAN. Thank you for your leadership, and also we look forward to our continuous collaboration with Switch Asia. Thank you also to the Switch Asia team, to Sirasa and to Sarah and colleagues for the support that we've been providing to the ASEAN Circular Economy Stakeholder Platform. So please visit the Switch Asia website to learn more about the Switch Asia initiatives that support Asia and the Pacific, the transition to SCP and circular economy. And we look forward to continuously collaborating with you and our partners in ASEAN. Thank you once again.
Thank you so much, Ms. Lorraine. Now, please, Kun David, give us an update on what should we look forward to after this series?
Sure. So for what next, right? I know many of you wish this discussion could last longer, and I want to let you know that your wish are granted. I want to make a save the date announcement for the second ASEAN Circular Economy Forum under the theme of guiding the transition, ASEAN and EU policy and business approaches to circular innovation and entrepreneurship, where there will be one dedicated section for discussion on this topic, a presentation on our next 3-year plan call for business engagement with the ASEAN Circular Economy Stakeholder Platform, with an opportunity to meet several CE champions and thought leaders in person. I'm talking about Prof. Kuan, Carlo, Dr. Anthony in person, and much more. And building on the first ASEAN Circular Economy Forum in Jakarta last year, this year the ACEF 2024 will be organized as a 2-day event with 3 side events between 1st and the 2nd of October in Bangkok, Thailand. In conjunction with the annual Sustainability Expo, it will be organized by the ACSDSD, the ASEAN Circular Economy Stakeholder Platform, ASEAN, SX Sustainability Expo, and the Enhanced Regional EU-ASEAN Dialogue Instrument, and co-organized by Hans Seidel Foundation, Hanoi office, in collaboration with Finland and Denmark. Of course, with support from the ASEAN Secretariat, EU delegation to ASEAN, EU stakeholder, and most importantly, the EU Switch Asia. And the SX Expo in Bangkok is scheduled from 27 September to the 6th of October at Queen Sirikit National Convention Center under the overarching theme of Sufficiency for Sustainability. It is an annual event organized by ASEAN, a foundation with a mission to strengthen regional connectivity and serve as a driving force for sustainability. It aims to provide a dynamic networking platform for collaboration among businesses leaders, the younger generation across this region. Having been held since 2020, last year the event attracted over 350,000 visitors and over 600 exhibitors from various sectors. Established as a pivotal event in ASEAN's sustainability realm, the Expo is fitting a backdrop for the 2024 ASEAN Circular Economy Forum. Please mark these dates on your calendar, 1st and the 2nd of October with a reminder, book my flight to Bangkok, and stay tuned for more information at our event website at acf2024.acsdsd.org. Thank you very much and have a restful evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kun David. So with that, with a heavy heart, we bid farewell to this webinar series, but do join Kun David, Dr. Tony, and Kun Shirashai in their activities to look forward to. But I'm pretty sure we're going to be able to say hello to you again in the next series, so do keep an eye out. Lastly, I would like to have a sincere, heartfelt thank you for our chairs for making this event happening, and our organizer team at the Switch Asia, our esteemed speakers, as well as all the participants who join us from the beginning to an end. And now we say goodbye until next time. Please have a good day.